The Devlawi. So we've got new questions coming at Ross Coulthart from News Nation. I'll keep it brief, which means I've already edited the segment to reduce some of the noise and keep the answers down a little bit. Go and watch the full segment, but you know that Ross sometimes it'll be a simple answer, but he might go into a lot more detail. But I'm trying to keep it just as brief as possible for anyone watching this. So let's have a look.
Let's do it. Let's go straight into Senator rounds. We have a lot of engagement over this interview that you just did. We'll go with the first question. Ross, after conducting the interview, do you believe the legislation has a reasonable chance of success, or do you believe more work needs to be done to get more representatives invested?
Look, the simple short answer is it's down to individual members of Congress and senators whether they vote for this legislation. And really, ultimately, a lot on the legislation that's being proposed depends on one, will it get passed? I think that's a big question mark. And even when it is passed, will it be given the respect that it deserves?
Well, one, the first question, will it be passed? Probably 50-50, I would say, on that. To be honest, I think there's bigger fish to fry now. I think with Trump coming in, a lot of people thought disclosure, legislation around UAP, special access programs and things like that. But between immigration stuff that's going on at the moment, between the big beautiful bill, between Musk apparently starting his own party, tariff and trade agreements being done with China. Um, yeah, I can imagine that this is really low on people's order. And then you've got things like the terrible, terrible, absolutely heartbreaking events that are happening in the floods at the moment over there. So hearts with everybody who's affected by that. So I can imagine that this will be really low on the pecking order, to be honest. Second point, is it going to get given the the attention it deserves? If number one is a big question mark, I can't imagine number two is going to be an absolute yes.
Because we have a long history of laws being flouted and ignored. And I do think that there's a serious risk that even if legislation does get passed, it will largely be swept under the table.
All right, Russ, thank you. Our next question also coming from X. This is from Odin's Raven. He's asking, I'd like to ask Ross if he believes that Senator Rounds was holding back in the interview and whether he thinks the senator knows more than he is letting on. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
I am no doubt whatsoever that Senator Mike Rounds knows a lot more than he's letting on. He's a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee. Look, he strikes me as a good guy. He's a nice bloke, but he obviously has to defer to the requirements of national security as a
Yeah, I mean, if someone in that position says they don't know more than what you know, everyone's in trouble. Whether it's to do with UAP and things like that, though, who knows?
member of a committee or committees that are read into national secrets.
All right, next, here's a
But I think even these special access, call them special access programs. So basically, the reverse engineering of downed alien NHI craft, for instance. So if they say if you're not ready into the special access program, you're not going to be able to know, and only certain people in the intelligence committee within Congress probably knows or been read into every special access program, if any. But then they're talking about this sort of secret government where it's not actually done in proper channels by special access programs. It's like the technology has been given to people like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Bigelow Aerospace, things like that, Raytheon, and they're doing the dirty work because there's no control at the government level of those because they're private sectors. So, yeah, I mean, it's all well and good saying about special access programs and being read in and things like that, but even they're not going through the right channels, then being read in means nothing.
question from Daniel. In the Rounds interview, he mentioned members of Congress could just not be read in on things. Considering his co author, Schumer, is a member of the Gang Eight, wouldn't Schumer
The Gang of Eight, I think Ross does go into details of who they are.
not being read in be illegal withholding of info? Do you have any comment on that line of reasoning?
I completely concur with whoever is asking that question. It's a very shrewd question. The simple fact is, I know for a fact that members of the Gang of Eight have not been told a lot of the secrets relating to UAPs. It has been kept from the Gang of Eight.
But you could make a counter argument that if there's no secrets to provide or no details to provide, then you would say, oh, the secret's being kept, but the reality is there's no secrets. It's just you're saying there's something to this, and we've got these black budget projects going on, but they don't exist. So you think we're keeping secrets when we're not? Maybe.
I suspect that now that there's more pressure being brought on Congress to essentially be more transparent and open and accountable on the issue of UAPs, I suspect that there are quiet briefings underway. And I do suspect that people like Chuck Schumer, when he was the Senate Majority Leader, and other senior members of the Congress who form part of the Gang of Eight, and just so people know, the Gang of Eight is essentially a group of people in the Congress, very senior members of the Congress. The Speaker's one of them, for example, Mike Johnson, who are essentially allowed to be read into every secret in the government. That's
I don't know why. This is a personal thing, a real personal thing. You let me know what you think. But it kills me a little bit inside when Ross calls it the Congress rather than just Congress. Like, I've never heard anybody other than Ross say, oh, David Grush is testifying in front of the Congress. It'll be David Grush is testifying in front of Congress. Or Congress are convening and discussing legislation. Or not the Congress. Somebody riding a motorbike out there if you're hearing noise.
the way it's supposed to work. And essentially, they're meant to be a way of providing a briefing to the Congress in a way that doesn't raise the possibility of it being compromised by it being provided, for example, to a full committee membership.
Okay, Russ, this next question, we had a lot of engagement and reaction wanting more on this question. Can Ross speak more about the kinds of retaliation whistleblowers have faced without naming individuals? Yesterday, he and Senator Rounds discussed whistleblower protections, yet we have seen folks like Rep. Mike Turner publicly mock whistleblowers, including David Grush's sworn testimony on live television. Notably, Rep. Turner was chair of the HPSCI at that time, and instead of investigating Grush's allegations, he chose to mock him.
Look,
Yeah, Turner apparently is hated within the UFO UAP circles, the community. You can understand why if he's doing things like that.
as people would have seen in the interview with Senator Mike Rounds, I clearly do think that there is a need for more enhanced whistleblower protections in the laws that are available to protect whistleblowers. I'm talking to people in the legacy program, the program that is concealing the retrieval and reverse engineering of UAPs. Yes, it does exist, who are telling me that they are intimidated about coming forward. And part of the problem is that at the moment, the system that we have is that even if you go to, for example, a congressional oversight committee with information, the default recommendation from those committees is to get the issue investigated by ARROW, the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
Yeah, the problem is the first iteration of Arrow was a joke, headed by someone who didn't want to be in that position or was planted in that position as someone who was going to debunk and basically say there's nothing to anything in terms of the phenomena. So I can imagine that whistleblowers who may have engaged with Arrow was basically told keep quiet at the point of interview, or knew that if they came forward and said we're willing to speak to Arrow, that their names would be on a specific list. I'm not saying the second iteration of Arrow is the same, but there's a lot of legwork there to build trust back up in Arrow, to be honest.
The body that investigates UAPs, is that there is a propensity inside the Defence Department to meddle with proper oversight of the UAP issue. And I think under the previous administration of Arrow, there was a lot of intervention, which meant that whistleblowers were not properly investigated. Their claims weren't taken seriously. And I've spoken to multiple people who've told me that they do not believe that Arrow was playing, as we say in Australia, a straight bat.
No, completely weren't.
All right, Ross, very good. Next question is coming from about NASA. Hi, Ross. Can you speak on the work compiled by Chief NASA Scientist Paul R. Hill in his book, Unconventional Flying Objects? Have you researched him, and why is he never referenced when NASA denies data on this topic? Thanks for all your great work, Jamie.
Look, I'm a huge fan of Paul Hill. I first heard about him when I read a review of Paul Hill's book, Unconventional Flying Objects by Hal Puthoff, sometime in the 90s. And he was a very senior aerodynamics engineer with NASA. I think he ended up in a very senior management position in applied science in NASA. Sadly, he died in about probably 1990, about 35 years ago, so I never got the chance to talk to him when I was researching my book. But he really was one of the groundbreaking pioneers of people inside NASA, and there are quite a few of them who have indeed taken the UAP UFO issue very, very seriously indeed.
I've never heard his name before, Paul Hill. I'll have a look into him. Unconventional flying machines. Unconventional flying machines. I can't say I've heard that term either, or that title.
He actually believed that the term UFO was misleading, which is why he used the term unconventional flying objects, because he also wanted to acknowledge that they fly transmedium and probably out into orbit. And he actually, as a scientist, as a materials applied scientist, a trained engineer, he set out trying to prove, and he did with his solid science, that the shapes and physics of UAPs were explainable within known science.
So basically, he's discounted the fact that they're non-human then. If he's saying that the shapes and the technology of these unconventional flying machines, objects. Hold on, flying objects? Unconventional flying machines is the title, right? Could be explained with traditional technology, then must be all human. Unless I understood that incorrectly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
All right, Ross, next question is coming from Jared. I have a question for Ross. Ari, the 1,000 abduction cases he's reviewed that he talked about at Contact in the Desert, were there any cases that happened in the last 5 to 10 years? It seems like abduction cases have ceased, which only raises more questions.
That's an interesting point. It was always framed that non-human intelligence or aliens, UFOs, right? UFOs has now become UAP, and aliens have now become NHI. And now there's this discussion around the fact that it could be some sort of plasma-based life form or interdimensional beings, where the UFOs are actually living objects themselves. But what about all these abduction cases where, grey aliens came out of a spacecraft and they went in the spacecraft and they were telling them about, oh, we're from this star system and the future's going to be bleak. Travis Walton, his story, he was hit by a beam of light, taken on board, subjected to some pretty harrowing, experiments, and then left about 7 days later. So what happened to all those cases? They seem to be less and less prevalent now in the discussion. It seems to be, yes, there is something to the NHI UAP discussion, but they're more, I don't know, the woo, almost like psionics. We're connecting with the UFO because it's a living plasma-based being or from another dimension.
Actually, it's funny you should ask that, because I'm still dealing with an enormous, actually overwhelming fire hose of information from people who are contactees, experiencers, and there is a subgroup in those of people who purport abductions, including military abductions. And I had a conversation as recently as yesterday with a person who I won't name out of respect for their confidentiality, who took me through the details of their alleged military abduction. Now, I don't know what to make of this. I'm genuinely still trying to get my brain around it. Like every other researcher and investigator in this field, I'm almost a little timid and scared of getting into the subject of abductions. And
I don't know why, Ross. Because if he's saying, I don't want to get into it because it's all a bit woo, it's nowhere. That is probably more plausible to me than people sitting in the middle of the desert, meditating, connecting psionically to UFOs. So, which is what Skywatcher are doing. If you ever watched a clip of them, you can see where they'll be sitting in like sleeping bags, lying down in the middle of the desert with headphones on to block out noise, ear masks on to block out light, and they'll basically be trying to psionically connecting or communicating with NHI or UAP. So that to me is way, way more woo than nuts and bolts craft coming from another star system, taking people in basically experimenting on them.
military abduction
Military abductions, I can believe, quite frankly.
contact experiences. I'm struggling to deal with the implications of it. I mean, if it's true, it means that people are being taken from their rooms in the dead of night by, often in some cases, military personnel of the United States collaborating with non-human entities.
Why is it just the US, though? Why is it just the United States military doing these things? If it's a global problem. And I noticed that Ross will say the legacy program is real. We're back engineering craft. That's non-human intelligent craft. That's real. The UAP phenomena is real. Special access programs, the secrets, reprisals against whistleblowers, that's all real. But then when he mentions abductions, I noticed it's like if it's real. So I think we can firmly say that this is probably the line for Ross of where he's not comfortable getting into it, because I don't think he's 100% on board that abductions are a real thing.
If that's true, it's absolutely astonishing.
All right, Russ, this next question's coming in again from X. This is from UAP Dude. Ross, based on your sources, do you believe there's a specific event, past or upcoming, that the intelligence community is actively preparing for? And if so, is the secrecy about UAPs more about what's already happened or what's about to?
How many people, if you're watching this, you're probably interested in the phenomenon and the discussion around it. Like me, I don't know if it's one thing or the other, whether it's all real or complete codswallop. But I'm interested, and I want to believe. Again, I reference X-Files as being the thing as a kid to get me really into the supernatural. I every now and then I'll go back and watch the series after about 5 years. I'll just start from start to finish because it's brilliant. But yeah, I think the 2027 is now being branded as the sort of year, the special year that something's going to happen. A lot of people are saying, was it Jeremy Corbell who came out and said, that very dramatic way of going, I'll tell you the date. Do you want me to tell you 2027? The government are going to lie to you and say that a massive UFO is on the way to Earth, and it's basically Project Bluebeam. But for anyone who doesn't know Project Bluebeam, it was a way of, it's basically a conspiracy to pretend that there's an alien invasion, to probably strip a large part of the population and control the masses. I mean, yeah, it's been talked about for years, Project Bluebeam, but 2027 keeps coming up. Keeps coming up as a date.
Look, thank you for your question, but let's look at the language. Do I believe? Okay, so do I have, without any evidence at all, a suspicion or a belief that something's going to happen? I never try and answer those questions because the simple fact is it's inviting me to be irrational, illogical. I try and deal with evidence as much as possible. I don't always do that, and I know sometimes I stray into speculation, and sometimes I regret that I do. A lot of people are asking me, do I believe that there's going to be some imminent catastrophe? What they should be asking me is, do I know that there's going to be some kind of imminent catastrophe or some kind of apocalyptic event? I don't know that at all, for sure.
All right.
See, I cut him off there. Go and watch the full segment. But it's one of those things like, but I hear and I've been discussing. But I think he's answered the question. He doesn't know.
Ross, you've been doing so well, but I'm going to have to bleep you there for that bull.
Andy used the bullshit word.
I can't go by without swearing at least once in a Q&A, Megan. You Americans are so puritanical. I think it all goes back to the Puritans landing on the shores of America, and you've never quite got it out of the system. It's a good swear every now and then as a healthy thing. We like it down here in Australia.
All right. I understand, Ross. All right, here we go. Couple more for you. All right, Phantom J. Can Ross comment on the likelihood the public will be shown high-quality pictures and/or video of NHI? Can Ross comment on when people who have touched the craft / seen the bodies will go public?
That's the thing with Skywatcher as well. Their original claim was that we can summon NHI 100% of the time, and UAP, not NHI. Yeah, so they can summon UAP 100% of the time, and they made it out that they could actually land UAP right in front of them, and then they've completely walked that back and said, "Yeah, we can summon it, but all it is now is grainy videos from a distance."
I actually am very skeptical that you're going to see any kind of controlled government disclosure anytime soon. I think I've made this pretty clear in the last few weeks that I see the Wall Street Journal articles and today's New York Times article from Ross Coulthart. I see them all as part of a controlled effort by the national security establishment to redirect the narrative.
I'll put the Wall Street Journal link there in the corner from a video I did previously.
With disinformation, basic mistruths, in order to mislead the public and divert them away from taking the UAP issue seriously. I think there's a panic starting to set in inside the national security establishment, that what they've been doing in the black covertly for so many years may potentially be revealed in a catastrophic way.
Now, the cynic in me says maybe there's nothing to it, but on the other side, if there is very much something to it and they've been keeping all these secrets, what's the one thing that you see in films where the FBI is sort of trying to beat the door down? You've got people inside shredding documents and setting fire to documents in bins. So surely if you think, oh Christ, this is going to come out eventually, wouldn't you just bury everything? Bury the tech? They'll destroy it, destroy any mention of it, destroy the scientists working on it not in a good way, or would you say, yeah, we can't destroy all this because we're going to need it going forwards for research and scientific purposes? So I don't know, but surely if you've got a black government who are really against the people, they'd just bury it, just destroy it all.
And frankly, I think that's inevitable eventually if they don't come forward and sooner or later tell the truth. I just think it's utterly absurd that people who regard themselves as the protectors of national secrets think that they can continue constraining the public's right to know. The public has a right to know about these projects because you've operated illegally and unconstitutionally, and in some cases criminally. That's why there's a right to know.
But again, maybe is it all this done for a reason where they know the reality of our reality in terms of NHI, and if the general public knew about what it is and why it's here and what our place is in all of this, there might be mass panic. Sometimes it's better not to know.
I don't think Congress is going to lead the charge. Frankly, I'm increasingly depressed and unimpressed with the level of engagement inside Congress.
All right.
And sometimes it bugs me because there's a building out there, according to Ross Coulthart, not me, there's a building out there, and underneath that building, there's a massive UFO that was way too big to move. So they built a building over it. It's not based in the US, apparently. A lot of people have said maybe it's Pine Gap in Australia. Sort of fits a little bit. People said the Vatican, that's the reason why it's its own country. There's a Denver airport, there's a lot of theories. But at the same time, it's something that apparently is known. Yeah, he'll always come out and say, but I'll never tell you where it is. That really bugs me, to be honest.
Ross, I think that's a beautiful place to end, but I just can't end it there because I've had a lot of viewers asking me about this one last topic. So I'm going to sneak this one in for you really quick. It's coming from Matt today. Just wondering what your thoughts are on the Buga Sphere allegedly retrieved in Colombia recently and the press conference convened in Mexico by Jamie Masson and U.S. Congressman Eric Burlison.
I've seen Stephen Greer is now involved. So, yeah, it's probably a lot of old pony, if I'm honest. I don't know if Stephen Greer has somehow managed to get himself front and centre of the entire conversation. It's definitely popped in there.
And present. It seems tantalizing for sure. Loads of YouTube debunkers are currently doing their worst to dissect it. As you're probably aware, there have been other videos of very similar
worse to discredit it. And to be fair, they've been doing a damn good job because it does look like fuel tanks. It looks like a few other things that they're saying it could be. It's badly engraved. So I don't know. It needs proper scientific research by independent panels, and it doesn't need the usual suspects like Stephen Greer popping up saying that it's definitely NHI tech. I saw a video of some guy just basically holding it his on like it's a bowling ball. Supposedly non-human intelligence technology, and he's just they're letting anybody hold it.
Objects in different locations popping up. Also, a ball and a string, or actual NHI tech with
ball and a string. I think that's a reference, to be honest, to the egg UFO, which basically just looked like an egg on a string filmed through a night vision camera, and it did. It really did.
Love to hear your perspective.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. As a journalist, I'm very wary of engaging with the Buga Sphere story because the people who are promoting it as an authentic anomalous object, I think, are preempting scientific investigation. I think it's wrong that there has been media publicity about this matter before it's been able to be rigorously, independently peer-reviewed, scientifically tested.
Well, good point. Good point. It should be, nobody should even know about it until, you've got the likes of Gary Nolan, who's gone in there and done some testing, and credible scientists going in there from credible universities, for instance, and making sure that it's not just one sort of area of investigation and discussion. It's a proper scientific panel that's got in there who you can trust. And yeah, it's the usual suspects where their names are front and centre. And to be fair, I've lost a lot of respect for Stephen Greer in recent years. I just think he's got this narrative and he's got his one way of seeing things and doing things, and he doesn't have a discussion if it's not in if it's not framed in the way that he wants to have the discussion. And that claim that he made about he was offered $2 billion to basically discredit the entire subject. Come on.
Yes, there's a lot of claims that there are.
And he's briefed presidents on the phenomena before.
Fiber optic cables or something built into the side of the object. There are a lot of claims about anomalous metal residue shavings. What I'd like to see with anything like this is independent peer-reviewed science. Why is that so hard before announcements are made in the media?
Because the people like me, I would sit there and go, yeah, I think it's fake. I think there's nothing to it. I think it's a dog and pony show. But there's going to be that element of people out there that want to believe it so much that they'll say, no, there's something to it. It's genuine. And those are the people that get targeted by things like this. Because I know there's going to still be an audience for it. And even if someone comes out and says, no, it's fake, there's still going to be a percentage of the people out there who go, well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe it's not fake. Maybe they're just trying to discredit it because it's genuine. There's always going to be believers. Always.
The problem's time and time again is people get excited and say, I've discovered something. It's anomalous. It must be anomalous because I say it's so. The only way to definitively prove this to the satisfaction of the scientific establishment is to put it to peer review, have an independent bunch of scientists making an assessment. That hasn't happened, despite what people say. Yes, I do think there is something to the phenomenon of metallic, hovering spheres that have been seen all over the world. I've championed a story about it in 2021. And one of the things that we're endeavouring to try and do is to get that sphere that I'm aware of properly investigated. We're not going to announce results unless we know definitively what an independent, peer-reviewed scientific team say about it. Part of the issue here is that certain broadcasters have basically made very, very dramatic claims about this object before there's really been any kind of definitive conclusion. End of rant.
Yeah, so he ends it there. He's got a good point. Do the science before you do the communication and telling the world. Because what's the point? Because then all you got is conjecture. I don't think there's anything to it. I think it's fake. I think it's a well-constructed fake that's got the right level of people involved to make it look like there's something to it. But I just don't think anything's going to come of it. It's a non-human intelligence orb that basically... Fiber optics. I mean, what technology are we using here? 1990s technology? Come on. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything to the Buga Sphere. It was a good segment. Ross always answers the questions in a very lengthy way, but I've tried to cut it down as much as possible. Hope you enjoyed. Go and watch the full thing if you want more context around some of his answers. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one. You take care.